for it to record.
And Jean-Pierre, you guys are good to go.
Thank you, Pierre. Well, welcome everybody for the last session of today on day 2 of Digital Transformation in Government 2023. Today, I welcome Eric Balodis, who's the Director at Bank of Canada for Analytics and Decision Support, who's today is going to be presenting us about the data fluency at the Bank of Canada, a learner-centric approach. So Eric has over 15 years of experience working in the Canadian public sector with a focus on applied science, product development, and analytics. He's had a privilege of working on with the Bank of Canada's first data strategy and led a program team to oversee its implementation from 2019 to 2021. And then in 2022, Eric became the bank's first Director of Analytics and Decision Support with a mandate of progress and analytics adoption at the Bank of Canada and to deliver innovative data and analytics solutions to all parts of the organization. And Eric has a Master's of Science in Physical Chemistry and an MBA. Like all the leading organizations, the Bank of Canada has been investing in its capacity to leverage data in all aspects of work. The data fluency, also data literacy, has been a cornerstone of all public sector data strategies, but it represents several challenges. Most organizations and workforces have a high degree of heterogeneity in their data fluency. That is, knowledge of basic data and statistical concepts that allow people to read and speak data in their day-to-day work. Addressing this heterogeneity by taking a learner-centric approach has been at the core of the Bank of Canada's data fluency program. This presentation will cover the strategic drivers for investing in data fluency. Over to you, Eric. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you very much, Sean, and thanks for everyone for coming to this coveted last session of the day slot. Right, I'll try to make it as entertaining as I possibly can. So I'll start by maybe talking a little bit about myself, and in case you were curious, that I'm the person on the top there, not the small little girl. That's my daughter. So yeah, I've been with the bank for nearly 16 years now. I grew up in Southern Ontario. I went to university in Southern Ontario, and I moved up to Ottawa for work, and I haven't looked back. I've really enjoyed it. As Jean has mentioned, I do have a background in physical chemistry and business. I love, being in Ottawa because it affords me an opportunity to do the things that I like. So adventure biking, mountain biking, hiking, running, spending time outside with my family really is kind of top of the list. So that's a little bit about me. This picture was taken actually during early COVID, when it was still that period where you couldn't get a haircut or anything, right? So underneath that hat is just like a wild mane. So that's me. The Bank of Canada now, I don't know how much you know about it. I know there's been a couple speakers earlier today from the bank, but I'll just kind of outline who we are quickly. So we're around 2,000 employees. This is important context for the discussion that we're about to have. We're established by the Bank of Canada Act to promote the economic and financial welfare of Canada. So we are not a sort of federal department. We are what's called an arm's length crown corporation. So we operate quite independently from the federal government. We have a very different kind of culture, a different operating model. Everything's sort of quite self-contained. I always like to think about it as a nice blend between private sector and public sector. The 5 sort of key mandates of the organization. So the first is to develop and implement monetary policy. That's probably the most visible thing when you open up the newspaper and you see, Bank of Canada raised its rates. So that's monetary policy. We oversee the financial system as well. We do develop and issue currency, specifically banknotes. And we act as the fiscal agent for the government of Canada, managing the government's funds. And finally, we do have a new mandate, actually, which is to provide supervision over payment service providers. And that's a mandate that we're kind of building out right now. So quite a diverse organization. I know there's 2,000 employees, but within that sort of mix, you've got, real hardcore kind of economists. You've got a huge number of technology folks that maintain some of these systems that underpin our financial system. You've got back office administration, you've got currency folks who are, operate more operational in nature. It's a really kind of mixed organization, which is part of what makes launching a program like Data Fluency at the Bank of Canada such a challenging but rewarding task as well. So let's get going, and I'll kind of start by asking the most obvious question, which is why should we focus on data fluency? So this conference is about digital transformation in government. Data is really at the core of digital transformations. You really can't do a lot of the things that you want to do when it comes to, digitalizing services or providing, better data for decision making, or whatever the kind of overall mandate for the digital transformation happens to be. You can't do it without having good data and therefore a knowledge of how to work with good data as well. So that's the 10,000 foot kind of view of why we should focus on data fluency. But let's maybe start by getting some kind of foundational definitions out of the way. So number one, what is data fluency? The first definition is an internal Bank of Canada definition that we use. So we say it is the ability to spot and identify opportunities to use data to derive meaningful information, to improve operational efficiencies, and to generate business insights in a secure and responsible way. The Gartner definition focuses more on these digital competencies. So they say it is the ability to read, write, and communicate data in context with an understanding of the data sources and constructs, analytical methods and techniques applied, and the ability to describe the use case application and resulting business value or outcome. So similar but different. You can see we really focus on the opportunity and the balance between innovation and responsible use. Gartner really kind of zeroes in on, data fluency is really about, these specific skills and sort of placing those skills in context. There are other definitions, of course, but these are the two that I think we tend to operate with most of all. So let's talk about why do we do data fluency training? And you would think this would be an easy question to answer, but really it's actually not an easy question to answer. And at the end of it, I always think about some of our client departments and if a managing director of a department comes to me and says, well, why would I invest in this, Eric? We have to kind of have an answer for them, right? So I've got three reasons for you here. So the first is to build a stronger data culture, okay? So by that, I mean, to try to create an environment where data are central to most conversations, to incentivize the use of data for decision-making analysis, and to make data cool, right? So it's this kind of intangible expectation that there's a real kind of reason to use data, whether it's because people are going to appreciate it more, or it's just it's an easier conversation to have, or there's an expectation. So it's that cultural component that gets woven into all aspects of the organization. So there's this big data culture kind of reason. Another one would be to upskill our workforce, okay? So by that, I really mean providing on-the-job training that allows staff to apply their knowledge to day-to-day tasks. It also means supporting advanced learners by providing them with the resources that they need so that they can go off and kind of build their own learning paths. But fundamentally, it's about making significant transformations to your standing workforce. So right away, you can see that these are two very, very, very different objectives. The first is, let's build this buzz around data. The second is, no, we need to really transform people into being data savvy practitioners who are in a position to apply what they learn to their day-to-day work. And you can appreciate that the way that we might approach learning is dramatically different. And the final one, and I have to admit, I stole this from someone else. There are companies out there that do data literacy as their, this is sort of their raison d'etre. And I asked one of the CEOs of one of these companies, come on, give me I've been doing this for a little while. Why do people do it really? What are we expecting here? And she thought about it for a while and she said, better business moments. And it kind of resonated with me, right? Because, even if you can't buy into that whole culture or we're going to upskill our workforce thing, you do want to kind of get to the crux of, why are we doing this? So having better conversations and debates that are rooted in data is a better business moment. Highlighting performance by pointing to metrics and not anecdotes is a better business moment. And generally shifting the organization away from heuristic decision-making to evidence-driven decision-making is those are a bunch of better business moments. So I like to think about these three kind of things, because as you'll see, when you start to grapple with these programs at the enterprise level, you have to contend with many, many different needs and demands all at the same time. It's not always clear exactly how to address them. So those are sort of three really good reasons to do data fluency training. So with that being said, let's talk a little bit about the challenges of implementing data fluency programs. And I've kind of tipped my hat on this a little bit already, but maybe let's just talk generally about the issue. So here are 5 things just right off the top of my head that, that we encounter on a kind of day-to-day basis. So number 1 is learner heterogeneity. So the diversity of the learner group within the organization. For an organization like the bank, which is not large, but I mean, 2,000 people is not small. There's a huge range of starting data fluency levels. And so right away, you have to accommodate, where am I going to target this training? Like, how do I bring people who are really, really new to data along with the people that are, extremely advanced and only want to have sort of access and support for, these edge use cases. So this is a massive problem. And I think this is probably broadly applicable. The other is the appetite for investment. So again, you can imagine that upskilling someone is significantly more time intensive than, say, creating buzz around data or changing the culture around data in your organization. So is someone in a department ready to make, a 100-hour investment to become proficient in, say, Python or something like that, right? So appetite for investment becomes very important, because you may have a misalignment between appetite for investment and expectations coming out of a training program. Modality, especially with adult learners, there's a huge range of preferences for how learning content is delivered. We need to try to hit as many of those as possible. So we can't just say, we're gonna throw this content online and that's it, good luck. You always have to sort of think about how people actually want to learn versus how you want to teach them. Strategic alignment. So again, are we aligned on what we expect to get out of the training? Is it culture? Is it upskilling? Does everybody understand that there are multiple reasons to do this? This is one that we deal with kind of all the time. And then finally, probably the biggest challenge, I would say, post-COVID is learner fatigue, right? Employees have learning fatigue, especially for online content. More and more, we are spending, the majority of our working lives staring at a screen, just like I'm doing right now, talking to a camera. Our meetings have shifted online. We do have hybrid work, but, if we're not synchronized on when people are coming in, you're still doing a lot of online meetings. You go home, you're exhausted. You put on the TV, it's more screens. So we have to be conscious of that too, because even though e-learning and some of these, MOOCs have really provided the opportunity, those massively online courses have provided the opportunity for, easy and quickly distributable learning. It also kind of, you're hitting people at a point where they're already super fatigued. So these are like general sort of systematic challenges. And when we look at the enterprise, again, we're faced with this challenge where, let's say that we have one department, which is, a relatively low starting data fluency. We've got a high investment appetite, so they're super excited to do this, and they have high data fluency aspirations. So this is okay. I mean, we can take them from, a lower fluency level, convince them to make that investment and sort of move up. But then the next department you deal with, maybe they're a little bit more data savvy, a more moderate kind of investment appetite, and more moderate fluency aspirations. But the same program has to be able to accommodate both of them. And as you go on, you encounter, any combination of these three things. Like, what do people expect to get out of it? How much time do they have to spend? And where are they starting, right? So at the enterprise level, clearly there is no one size fits all, I would argue, for most organizations that have the same degree of, heterogeneity or learner variability as the Bank of Canada. So those are some of the challenges. Now let's talk about how we sort of address those. So putting the learner first, let's kind of think about that for a second. So really, when we say we put the learner first, what we're really saying is, this is about understanding the unique needs of learners at the organization and sort of trying to meet them where they're at. So we're focusing on an empathetic approach to developing programming, not trying to jam something down people's throats. And this can mean that we iterate a lot. We try a whole bunch of different things. We may fail. That's okay. We need to be, really open to kind of feedback and criticism. But we're sort of creating this like relationship where the learner has, multiple different ways of engaging with content that allows them to kind of pick and choose how they want to engage with the content, right? So we're really trying to meet them where they're at. And again, in a diverse organization, that means meeting many different people at many different places to try to get this done. And I think, again, at the end of the day, there has to be an understanding rooted in your programs that learner time is extremely valuable and learner attention is priceless, right? So attention is the new currency. If you can grab people's attention and you get, a few minutes of that and they kind of sit down and focus in on something, you have to have something in your programming that makes that time valuable. Sure, you might kind of get them to come in and do a more detailed learning path, but fundamentally, that's what you're trying to grab is somebody's attention so that they can think about it and then go back and start to apply it to their day-to-day work. So let's talk about how we do that at Bank of Canada. So we basically have three main components to our program. So the first is enterprise learning content. So this is, for the most part, general content. It's geared towards general learners from across the organization. We offer it in sort of guided pathways or through self-service content that is licensed by the organization. It includes other digital artifacts like job aids, podcasts, conferences, and any sort of broadly applicable material. So this would be like, non-specific. This is out there for anyone to go and service whenever they want. It really doesn't matter if you're coming from human resources or finance or, economic analysis or currency. Like you can go there and actually engage with the content and hopefully there's some value there for you. The second major component is something that we call in-person support. So this is where we are providing hands-on training and development support from data experts within the organization to clients within the bank. We have a wide range of vehicles, which I will talk through, but this tends to focus more on real problems from day-to-day work. So it's an opportunity for someone to say, hey, I'm struggling to write this DAX query in Power BI, or I don't know how to get data out of SAP, or whatever. I need help figuring out this loop in Python. So those instances where you're solving a business problem and transferring knowledge at the same time are super valuable. It's way more intensive from an effort perspective, but it's a bigger win-win, right? Because you've got a direct knowledge transfer, and then you've also got this sort of aspect of it where you actually solve a business problem, which is highly valuable. And then the final kind of component of the program we call custom content. So this is like white glove, we're going to develop something super specific for your needs. Generally, we would focus on doing that where the content is just not available elsewhere. So, we have systems within the organization that you're never going to find a course on how to work with them in Coursera or edX. So maybe we develop that content in-house. The other area where you might want to kind of do this is for audiences that are kind of harder to get to or niche, where they really do, need to maximize the value of that interaction with your data fluency content. We can and have done this internally. A great example is we have a very strong data science program. They've developed, university level course. I mean, half these data scientists that we have were actually professors. It's amazing. So they've developed, university level coursework for delivery to areas of the organization where they want to go super deep on a specific topic, whether that's, machine learning or natural language processing or whatever. So we can and do that internally. We can also procure it from outside vendors. So as an example, we could go and procure a course on Power BI basics, right? And we have done in the past as well. So this is custom content. So those are the three main kind of pillars, right? We've got enterprise learning content, in-person support, and then the custom content. So if we look at how we deliver the content, again, remember I said that modality was a major challenge. You can get a sense of the diversity as it sort of gets distributed across these three pillars. So for enterprise learning content, we do a whole bunch of different stuff. We've got obviously e-learning, we've got podcasts, conferences, we've got job aids, we've got our internal intranet network. We have communities of practice, right? So we're hitting a range of things here. We've got, all kinds of different channels for people to access the material. One-on-one support by its nature is a little bit more hands-on. So yes, we do have one-on-one support via e-learning, but we also have office hours. We have drop-in support. We've got in-person training. We have communities of practice, which service that need as well. And then finally on custom content, again, we've got, e-learning, we've got in-person training, job aids, communities of practice, and there are others that I'm just not capturing here, but you get the idea. There is no kind of silver bullet. You have to do a whole bunch of different things kind of all over the place and, figure out what works and sort of go with that. So now I can do a bit of a show and tell here. So this is an admittedly grainy screenshot from our learning experience platform. So at the Bank of Canada, we've got an LXP, we call it Curio. It's basically the ingress point for all training. It's intended to be like a one-stop shop for all of your training needs at the bank. And you're seeing the channel here for data fluency. And so what you see here is that we've got, I haven't captured everything here, but you can see how it's sort of structured, right? We've got an introductory sort of pathway. We've got guided learning, which is actually done by data role. There are others that we have in here that I haven't shown. So you'd have a pathway based on, data competency. Let's say you wanted to be analyze, write data would be the competency cluster. Then we'd have a separate pathway. Each one of these tiles, if you click it open, is filled with content. So it will have, sometimes a handful of videos or a white paper or an article to read. In other instances, it will be, go and do this specific course and then read this and then sort of, do this other thing. So a ton of work has gone into kind of creating this fairly diverse set of pathways for the organization. You'll notice also that we've done everything bilingually. So again, Bank of Canada is a bilingual organization. Everything that we do in English, we also seek to do in French. It's not always the easiest for some of the more detailed topics, but we take the time to kind of go through and do that. These, where we can't find French content, we also look to sort of, can we actually build something from scratch to make sure that we're addressing that bilingual need at the organization. Very successful, but you can see this is sort of like the core of the e-learning piece at the Bank of Canada. The other things that we do, so we've got a whole bunch of other digital artifacts, right? So podcasts I mentioned earlier, these are great. We can do them in like 10 to 15 minute kind of snippets. They're awesome for building culture. So you can see there's an example of one here that we did last year, where we interviewed actually one of our directors who's responsible for coordinating the bank's operational response to COVID. And we had a really good discussion with him about how he used data to inform some of the COVID responses from an operational perspective. No more, we try to keep these, 10, 15 minutes long sort of thing. But they're, again, like great little snippets that you can listen to on the ride in on the bus, or if you're bored at lunch, sitting at your desk, eating by yourself. I hope that never happens, but you can, pop this on and listen to it, right? So again, stuff like this helps to build the culture of the organization. It also kind of helps connect people in the organization to others who are actually working with the data, which is another sort of side benefit of doing this. Job aids, these are, again, super valuable. So typically these are 1 to 2 page documents that have been built by data experts that outline the basics of a specific thing. So you can see this one here is about Power BI best practices. It talks generally about the path to, developing and publishing content in Power BI. It talks about, some of the key terms and concepts. There's contact information there on how to get people connected with the communities of practice or experts. So again, we keep building up these libraries of job aids, and then they become digital artifacts that accompany the, paced or guided learning pathways. So very, very engaging content as well. Sorry, I'm just going to take a sip of water here. There's no ventilation in my office when I shut the door, so it becomes very one. Okay. So some of the more fun kind of in-person stuff or live stuff, we have super robust communities of practice. So I've just taken a snapshot here from our Power BI community practice. So this is one of the most active COPs of the organization. There's a whole bunch of content buried in there too. So you've got almost like a Stack Overflow for how to address specific issues within Power BI. You've got office hours with Power BI experts. They meet on a, I think, weekly or bi-weekly basis. It's open to anyone in the organization, so you can come and bring challenges, or for the IT and data leaders within the organization, it becomes a venue for providing some of the more detailed content to Power BI users within the bank. We have another one for Tableau, which is our other main visualization tool. We have a kind of umbrella community practice for data and visualization, which focuses more on sort of the general BI practice and visualization practice as well. Very, very useful. They're extremely powerful, hard to build, but very, very powerful once they come together. Conferences and data month, we've done a bunch of these. So this is just a snapshot from the page for the data month last year, which typically happens in November. These are, basically we spend an entire month coordinating talks around data. So we will bring in external people. Last year we did a hackathon, which you can see here, where we actually had teams within the bank compete with an open data set to, develop visualizations and predictions for the World Cup. We do topic specific stuff. So you'll see the data behind the MPR there is, this would be someone from within the organization talking about how data feeds our monetary policy report, right? So again, these things are very, very valuable, not just from a learning and development perspective, but also from a let's build the data culture, let's build the kind of buzz around data perspective. Yeah, so that's kind of like the enterprise pillar, which is admittedly where we've made, the most progress in the short term, at least. If I look at in-person support, we've done a couple different things. So we've got office hours. So this is, regularly scheduled time for bank staff to kind of talk to data experts in a sort of one-to-one way. So I can say, my office is open for office hours between 1 p.m. and 2 p.m. or something like that. It can be any subject. Again, like we've got data science folks who do office hours. We've got, my team, the analytics group, who do office hours. You can get support on basically anything you want. It can be advanced topics, basic topics, doesn't matter. And you know what, if someone brings me a complicated topic about LLMs and I need to throw it over to my data science colleagues, that's part of the advantage too, is making those connections. Personalized one-on-one support. So we do a lot of consulting. So in the Bank of Canada, we have departments that don't always move at the same speed in terms of how they want to undertake data related or digital transformations. We do a ton of consulting on how these projects are structured, how they might want to pace them, what are the pitfalls, what's the investment level, all of that stuff. So we generally get involved in that. Usually this is tied to a broader initiative, and we can also do something akin to data mentorship, where if we have individuals who are in areas that are undergoing significant data transformation, they can get partnered up with someone who will provide them with a ton of support, a ton of one-on-one support on a more kind of regular and structured cadence to make sure that they're able to sort of, meet the needs of that transformation program. And then finally, we have something called a data cafe. So we do this in the atrium of the Bank of Canada. So it's in a very public space, a lot of traffic. We try to have multiple data experts present. So we'll have, one from data science, one from analytics, one from, financial information and statistics. And the idea is that, you can go down there, it's less formal, it's less structured. You can just go down, grab a coffee, listen in on the conversations if you want to, or you can sit down with an expert and have a kind of meaningful conversation. It's very like AMA, if you're, a Reddit user, like Ask Me Anything. It's kind of that style of engagement. We really don't try to ring fence what the topics are. We try to keep it as sort of general as we possibly can. So that's in person. If we look at custom content, again, we have sort of three main things. We've got custom learner paths. So I talked about learning paths as being a collection of content that is very curated for a specific purpose. So maybe it's based around a competency cluster. We can also do hyper-specific role-relevant learner paths for specific parts of the organization. So we might do one within our HR department that has use cases that are very tailored to human resources. So you can imagine that, privacy legislation is much more important, right? Or data anonymization or obfuscation. Like these are topics that we might want to include in a custom learning path for a human resources department. They're also a little bit more immediately applicable for that client group than the enterprise-wide stuff because they don't have to extrapolate out of enterprise-wide learning. They can just do this and then turn around and start working basically right away, which is great. Custom in-person training, again, I've talked a little bit about this earlier. I will say it's very useful for high-touch stakeholders where focused interactions are most important. And I would say a good example would be executives. Executive time is like, as much as all of our time is precious, executive time is both scarce and precious, right? So, any interaction you have with that group has to be like laser focused. You've got to go in with a specific reason. If I were to go to an executive group and say, here's a bunch of generalized content, go and sort of fill your boots, I don't think we'd have a lot of success. So we've been really kind of digging into, well, how might we structure an executive training program or a program for executives that kind of really provides that immediate high value to them. So this is where, custom in person, let's lock them all in a room and kind of get them to focus on this. That's where we might want to look at that stakeholder group uniquely and provide some custom in-person training. Again, we can do this by developing it in-house, or we can do it by sort of outsourcing it. And then finally, we have role-specific job aids. So data fluency artifacts that are developed for specific areas or specific roles. And again, this provides an opportunity to service diverse clients. I mean, job aids are a lot easier to create than learning pathways. So we can, bolster those more generalized enterprise level learning pathways with job-specific job aids. And what it does at the end of the day is that it contributes to this sort of larger library of job aids at the organization. So again, very valuable. How you mix and match these things is the real kind of, that's the magic. Like how much enterprise stuff should we do? How much in person? What can we afford to do from a resourcing perspective is another question that you need to ask yourself. So for advanced users, what do we do? Well, we have self-service learning. So the bank does license a whole bunch of content. So we've got things like O'Reilly. Obviously, we've got LinkedIn Learning, Microsoft Learning, and a ton of others, right? A lot of the advanced users just want answers to their questions or access to very, very specific things. So if you want to go to O'Reilly and figure out how to do advanced data modeling in, Databricks, there is content there for you, right? We can also do topic-specific training. And again, this can happen if we have, applications that are either niche to the bank or applications of open source technologies that are sort of niche in their application. We can develop customized learning content. So we do offer a fairly robust training program, courtesy of some of my colleagues in the IDES department, and they'll provide, training for economists on how to use Python, or training for economists on how to use Databricks or Julia or whatever, right? So those are the two kind of things that we really do for advanced users. Of course, they have access to all the other stuff, but our hope is that by providing them with these resources, we're not only helping them, but we're helping them become, data mentors for those in their department who are sort of engaged in that learning process as well. So there's quite a lot there, and what comes next for us, right? So again, I would say, those hard to get to stakeholders and clients, so executives or niche pockets of the organization that may not be as well served by some of the enterprise, the more general content. Those are areas that we're increasingly trying to sort of understand and make sure that we have programming that meets their needs. Data fluency self-assessment framework and tool. So this is something that we're hoping to get done this year. Again, you can buy some of these off the shelf, or you can bring in service providers who have them. It's a great way for us to create a feedback loop for end users of the content that, is a little bit easier than, trying to turn around and apply it at work, and then maybe that doesn't work. And then they're sort of left wondering like, well, what didn't I learn, right? So the data fluency self-assessment framework and tool is really important. We want to tie it to our data competency framework so that you get that entire sort of, mix of training, feedback, framework, right? The whole thing should kind of all come together. Strengthening decision science training. So again, I've always been an advocate of, well, why do we do analytics? Do analytics to make better decisions, but what exactly does that mean? And if I'm investing in analytics, can I point to a decision where I'm using data, and how am I using data? So this is like a big, it's a passion of mine, but it's also, I think, a really good rationalization for analytic investment broadly, right? If you're really using your analytics in your decision making, you should be able to point to a decision and say, that's where I used it, right? And part of that is changing the culture around decision making. So strengthening decision science training at the organization is something that I'm very interested in. And I think once we kind of get over this initial curve of building out a program, it'll provide us with a bit more opportunity to kind of explore those topics. And then finally, I mean, we have iterated on this stuff a billion times. We've failed a bunch of times. This is an ongoing thing, right? Reviewing content, collecting feedback, continuing to iterate. None of the feedback is personal. It's a way for us to get even closer to the users to make sure that we're understanding what they need. So we will continue to kind of take this approach, and if we need to mothball programs or learning paths and focus on others, we'll continue to do that. Maybe just a final note on strategy, and this is something specific to the bank. I'm not saying this is the right way of doing it or not. So we've taken the approach that data fluency content, generalized data fluency content, is largely commoditized. And by that, I mean, there are several service providers where I can go and get general SQL training or, general whatever, like data modeling training. I can go to any one of these companies listed here, and there are probably dozens others that I haven't even thought of. It ranges in cost from $0 to quite expensive. But the point is, it's out there, right? So we kind of see the value of data fluency programming really in the strategy, the curation, and the execution. So we've chosen preferentially, partially out of necessity, to kind of focus on those areas as opposed to we're going to build custom content that is really specific to our organization. This might not work for you. There are very good examples in the Canadian public sector, like StatsCan is a great example where they've built a lot of content internally for their own internal users, and it is fantastic. I've seen some of the StatsCan content. It's really, really good. For an organization of our size, given our needs, and given the sort of, the investment strategy, this is kind of the strategy that we've adopted. It's definitely open for debate. So I think I've got about 3 minutes, so I'll wrap it up here in conclusion. Here's basically where we're at. So we are, the #1 learning channel on our learning experience platform. There are dozens of channels, but we are the #1, so we're very proud of that. We've done 10 learning pathways that we've developed and launched. We've got a whole bunch more that are kind of on deck. We've done 2 bespoke data academies developed and launched. And remember, these are a collection of pathways specific to a particular area of the organization. And we will continue to kind of develop and launch those as the needs arise. We've delivered 3 data conferences. So we have kind of 2 formats for this. One format is we do a concentrated half-day session where we bring in a keynote speaker, and then we get, a couple speakers from the Canadian public sector, and then we get a couple internal speakers, and we spend half a day just talking about data, listening to very interesting people, having good conversations. So we've done that 3 times, and then we've done 2 of these data month, bigger, month-long events where there's sort of a handful of talks spread out over the entire month. We have 3 enterprise communities of practice established. We've put hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours into one-on-one support. This is the most invisible part of the entire thing because it's harder to track, but my staff are constantly fielding phone calls from different parts of the organization. Hey, can you help me with this? Or having office hours, or building those data mentorship relationships. Massive undertaking for us. And we've done dozens and dozens of digital artifacts. So again, job aids, podcasts, glossary, business glossary terms, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this is kind of where we're at. And I guess to wrap things up, what I would say in terms of how you overcome some of these challenges of the heterogeneity, the lack of strategic alignment, the differences in expectation. So again, #1, put the learner at the center of the journey. Hopefully I've showed you that we have a bunch of different ways of trying to get to the learner, or rather trying to make sure that the learner can access the material that they want. This has been, I think, more successful than trying to create something that's monolithic and, sort of jammed down everyone's throat. No, like listen to them, figure out where they are, try to meet them where they're at, give them lots of different options. Take a group by group approach. So again, you can't address the entire organization at once. Just don't even try. Like focus on groups that are a little bit more homogeneous. Try to develop content that you can deliver to them, and then maybe move to other adjacent groups and sort of do it that way. Develop a wide range of learner paths. Again, we've done this by competency, by data role, by persona. Personas are super valuable, by the way. I didn't talk about it earlier, but a persona is a great way for you to create this fictitious person that exists within your organization. And it allows you to kind of flesh out, well, what would Bob, the data architect, need to access his training? And how is that different from, Susan, the senior director, right? So, I mean, those things are very important and very valuable as well. Again, build a diverse array of delivery methods. I've talked about all the different things that we're trying to do to hit those groups. Make the learning relevant. You can do that really easily with one-on-one training because it's focused in on job-specific challenges. And finally, invest intelligently. If you've got a massive budget and you can do, bespoke content, go for it. If you know that your organization really only needs to focus in on one part of the entire, universe of data domains, then go ahead and do it. But just be intentional about it, right? Because you're going to run out of money. I mean, that's a guarantee if you're running a big enough program. That's all I have for today. So thank you. I know it's a late, 4:20 on a Wednesday, day 2 of the conference. Hopefully you found that interesting, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thanks very much. For those of you who may not know, the button at the bottom of the screen, Q&A, you just have to click on that to write up your questions and we can take those. Right now there's none. So full disclosure, I had to reboot my router. I got booted off the internet, so I missed a big chunk of your presentation, unfortunately.
It was boring. Don't worry about it.
But I'm back. And so I'm just wondering if your approach to learning and that sort of thing, how you might be, I guess, collaborating with those across the government of Canada. Yeah, we'll start with that.
Yeah, so the government of Canada has, I mean, I have to admit, I'm not intimately familiar with how it is all structured, but certainly there's the CSPS that provides a lot of training. You've got, training that is embedded within some of the federal departments. We have in the past been sort of a part of all of those discussions. So, we have a regular kind of attendance at a data, I think it's called the Data Literacy Capacity Working Group or something like that, led by the CSPS. We've connected with our peers in some of the federal departments. We've done a lot of work with ISET as an example to try to figure out, okay, like how are you approaching data literacy? Certainly we're plugged into StatsCan. We've seen what they've been doing. We've borrowed some of their content for our own data fluency programming. So yeah, we try to stay connected. Again, I think, there's no single solution to this, right? And it's so organizationally specific that even within the Canadian Public Service, you see that there's a range of how they've approached data fluency. So we try to stay abreast of it, but we also try to focus on what are the needs of our organization and what can we learn from what they've done. So actually a good example would be the personas, right? Mackenzie Kitchen presented at the GC Data Conference in 2019, I want to say, on some of the proposed personas that they were putting together for the CSPS training. And, we went there, talked to them about it quite a bit, but we borrowed that idea. The strategic underpinnings of our first iteration of the data strategy are based on, yeah, like we need to go off and do personas too, right? So yeah, I mean, we try to share as much as we can. We're not in competition, obviously. So, there's no reason not to.
Excellent. Thanks for that. Still no questions from the audience, so you can get them in now while it's fresh. Okay, so another question that I've come up, which may not be as pertinent. I'm just wondering about if there's been a change, along with COVID and everything happening, and the I guess maybe the adoption more and more of people remotely, if that you think is helping or hurting in terms of data literacy. As an example, like maybe it allows you to select new employees from a broader base, potentially from across Canada, or has that factored into any of the work that you've been doing?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll start with the data literacy perspective, which is no, like COVID created a ton of learner fatigue that we are now grappling with as a learning program, just like any other learning program in the organization. So that's been a major challenge across the board. The second piece, which is really around talent, I mean, yes, of course, right? Like, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, working at the Bank of Canada meant that you had to be in Ottawa at the bank, 5 days a week nominally, except by exception, which were extremely rare. The competition for data talent is global. It's not limited to any one sector. It is, it crosses public and private sectors. It crosses every single industrial sector you can think of. We're not immune to that, right? So especially over COVID, where we were all working from home, it made sense to sort of broaden our pool of candidates. The other advantage that we have is that we do have a presence in multiple different cities across the country. So, that did provide an opportunity for us to have bank staff that, may spend more time working in Vancouver and reporting into a Vancouver office as opposed to sort of being pinned to downtown Ottawa. But this is the reality, right? Like organizations that can really compete on that new dimension of remote work. I mean, that is a very compelling part of an employee value proposition for sure.
Well, thanks very much. I've got no more questions. I don't know if you wanted to have any final thoughts, or if
no, I mean, I know it's, like I said, late on a Wednesday, last session of the day. So, feel free to reach out to me if you do have any questions. I could probably talk about this for hours and hours, but I'm sure that's not top of mind for anybody right now. So I'll just say thanks for having me.
well, definitely a hot and current topic and government across the globe, I'm sure. Well, thanks very much, Eric, today for presenting. Very much appreciated. All right,
Okay.
have a great day. Thank you.
Absolutely. Take care.
Yeah, so for the rest of you, I guess that's the end of the day. There's a daily wrap up. If you go back to stream 1, you'll hear from Bob finishing off the day. As well as for tomorrow, there's going to be some interesting topics. So we'll be starting off with City of Taipei and a whole host of other different topics with 3 streams in the afternoon. And so there's quite a lot more to come, as well as the in-person sessions that are going to be happening at the University of Ottawa on Friday. If you had purchased those capabilities, it wouldn't be too late if you wanted to switch to that. Okay, well, thanks everybody, and that's the end of the session. Thanks.